Good morning. I look up and there I am on the monitor. I guess it's my turn. So, good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples. My name is Tony Fisher. I'm just so happy to welcome you into the sanctuary this morning. We have made an announcement that we're at 50%, but as I said to Anna, our office administrator, the other day, I don't think we need to worry about that quite yet. Maybe next week we'll need to think about it, but we're so glad you're all here. We're glad that anyone who's watching online is with us this morning, and those of you who were out in the pavilion, great to see you out there as well. It looks pretty comfortable out there. Hope the sound is good. If it's not, then let us know. I'm grateful for everyone who makes the services on Sunday morning possible, from Dan Goodset in the AV room and John Forsyth, who's away, but the people in the kitchen who make coffee and provide some refreshments afterwards. We're so grateful for their time. The office staff, Anna Riazzi, for getting things ready on Sunday morning, for our fabulous co-music directors, Abby and Sean. And I'm especially grateful this morning to have our worship associate with us, Ed Ostrom. So I'll let Ed finish up the welcome.
So let me add my good morning to that of Tony. My name is Ed Ostrom, and I'm your worship associate this morning. We are grateful for your presence, whether you're here in the sanctuary, outside on the pavilion, at home, sitting in your comfortable chair, and we are no less grateful if you have found another time to watch the service on Facebook or YouTube. If you are new to our congregation, we are especially grateful you found us. Our hope is to make you feel welcome and help you find ways to connect. Our mission statement reads, "The Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples is a welcoming congregation, freely seeking intellectual and spiritual growth. We strive to create a larger community of peace, justice, and love. Here we learn and grow together and try to live our lives and our values out in public." If you found us online for the first time, we also hope that you'll email our administrator at office@uunaples.org so that we can include you on our regular email blasts and let you know about all of the upcoming learning and fellowship opportunities here at UUCGN. And now, let's settle ourselves into this time of worship with this, the morning's prelude.
A chalice is lit in our midst, a symbol of our free faith, a faith built on the foundation of freedom, reason, and acceptance, a faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice, a faith that visions a world flourishing with equality for all her people, a faith that demands a living out of goodness, a faith that requires thoughtfulness, a faith of wholeness. This tiny flame is a symbol of the spark of all these within each one of us. Let's join together in the chalice lighting response that you'll see on the screen. May this flame stir our hearts and remind us of our mission to be truly welcoming, to grow in mind and spirit, and to widen the circle of peace, justice, and love. And we've decided not immediately to sing as a congregation. We'll see how that goes over the next few weeks, but maybe you can hum along in your Mass this morning as Sean and I will share the opening hymn, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, yet again come.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Abby. So Happy New Year. Woo-hoo! We made it. To what end, I suppose? That's the question. The 2021 was something of a recurring nightmare with variations, so to speak. Question is whether we'll be able to change the nightmarish narrative in 2022. We'll have to see. The epitaph for 2021 might read like the one found on a Maryland grave for an atheist. Said, "Here lies an atheist all dressed up with no place to go." It's really hard to sort of get yourself excited about the coming year when we have really no idea how it's going to play out. And yet, here we are as a community gathering to bring ourselves together to find some spiritual, intellectual sustenance to help us find our way. January 1st is a somewhat arbitrary beginning of the year. It sort of falls a little bit after the solstice, which might seem like a natural time. And in fact, New Year's has been celebrated at different times throughout history. Sometimes the end of the harvest is the beginning of the new year, or sometimes March, the beginning of spring, the spring equinox. So it's really hard to figure out why January 1st, except for the fact that when the Roman calendar was actually put into place, and January happened to be the month named after Janus, the Roman god of beginnings, so it made a little sense to just put January 1st as the first of the year. The Chinese obviously celebrate a lunar calendar, and that calendar begins somewhere between January 20th and February 20th, and this year it's February 1st, but it's the beginning of the new moon, of the beginning of the year. All arbitrary. We can start a new year anytime we want, and sometimes I think of September as a start of our new congregational year, and that, for me, gets my juices flowing, and I don't know about you, but that's it for me. But we have this problem of, all right, so we have a new year, and what do we do with it, and do we mark this day, or do we not? And this year especially is very difficult, I think. I think we all need to just realize how hard the last 2 years have been. And how much we need one another, and yet how much we are kept somewhat distanced as we begin again a little bit of social distancing. And we have also a struggle with our society. It seems to be as stuck as we are in terms of moving forward. How do we sort of get things moving in a direction that at least of conversation, if not of cooperation? It's so hard when we realize that the world today is stuck and divided, especially within our country, but it's also true around the world, the forces of sort of authoritarianism and conservatism versus those who are progressively minded and wanting to make change and create some sense of equanimity in the world. It's really hard, and so let's just sit and acknowledge the fact that this is not an easy time as we make a transition into a new year. E.O. Wilson, the wonderful scientist, evolutionist, I guess you would say, died a week ago today. He was known to say that the problem of humanity is the following. We have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology, and we don't know what to do with them. But the reality is that our present situation doesn't determine exactly where we go. They merely determine where we start. And so here we are, January 2nd, 2022. We have to get used to writing that down, I guess. But I also think we need to begin with a little humility. We need to understand that each one of us, all of us, are struggling in this environment. None of us are alone in that. And letting that seep in a little bit, that we are together in this, and that if we sort of approach this with a sense of humility and not of, this is happening to me, that we can begin to have some conversations that might move us forward. As Einstein said, a human being is part of the whole, called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness, as he put it. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and affection for a few people nearest to us. Our task, Einstein wrote, must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening the circle of understanding and compassion and embracing all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. E.O. Wilson, Charles Darwin, Einstein all had this endless curiosity about life and change and how things happen. And that's our starting point. Starting a year with glad curiosity about what might happen, how we might impact this coming year as individuals and as a community. Let's join together in humming our centering hymn, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit tale tu compasión sopla volar sube la mar hasta moldear la justicia de la vida. Arraigame, libérame, fuente de amor, ven a mí, ven a mí.
Holding in our hearts and minds all the losses that we've sustained in the past year. Those who have died from the virus, those who have died in solitude, those whose families could not reach them. We hold in our hearts and minds all those members of this community who have passed in the closing year. We honor their gifts and their contributions. Thinking back over this year, if you have someone that you'd like to hold up, I hope that you'll speak their name out loud when I offer the time. Expressing that name out loud in public so that we might hear. Joys and sorrows. And you online as well, feel free to name someone who you're thinking about this morning. Give that name some life by speaking it. We honor all those in our society who work hard every day to make our lives easier. The essential workers who give of themselves to bring us food, to provide us shelter, to care for us. So grateful for their gifts of their time, their talents, their abilities. We honor their needs as well, knowing that often those on the front lines are not treated as well as they could or should be. I'll invite Ed up to help me with the meditation this morning. The 23rd Psalm is, for many, something that provides solace in times of difficulty, times when we face the realities of our lives and deaths. This morning, we offer an alternative version with Ed will share with you the text from Scripture. I will share some offerings in the spirit of meditation.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Spirit of love, grow within us so that we can build a world where the needs of all can be met.
He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul.
Spirit of life, nurture our spirits so that we can create a place where others too can be healed and strengthened.
He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake.
Spirit of truth, quicken our sense of what is right and good so that we may be models for those who come after us.
Yes, Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me.
Spirit of compassion. Cultivate this feeling of community where we find comfort and strength to weather the storms of life and the certainty of death.
Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anoint my head with oil. My cup runneth over.
Spirit of justice. Inspire us to a life of selflessness and sharing so that all may come to know the abundance present in our lives.
Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all of the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Spirit of hope. Stay with us now and always as we strive toward the goal of peace and beloved community here on our earthly home. Let's share some time of silence together.
Well, Abby, the reading this morning, Winds of Change by Stephen Schick. They gathered at the edge of my world, whispering, then howling, then roaring, moving into me, pinning my soul to this particular place in this particular position. Danger spoke loudly in my ear. Bend now, bow now, or break. My heart and mind spoke back. No, not ever. The winds whirled, ascending to heaven, crashing down upon me, pushing, shoving, ripping me open, spilling all that I had nearly ordered. Then the winds were gone. And in the distance, I heard them laughing as they touched my neighbor with a gentle, even evening breeze. Wait, wait, I cried. Look back here. Look at what you have done. But it was too late. They were gone. And I was left to recreate my world.
For we do not own the winds, for we do not own the winds, the winds. Then what we must always do, what we must always do, is adjust ourselves, adjust ourselves, adjust ourselves, ourselves, for we do not own the winds.
And we are left to recreate our world. Honoring the fact that each one of us has our own world, our own closed universe that has its own issues and problems. We are nonetheless left through the winds of change to recreate a world. We can do that only if we can envision something towards which we can move. We have that choice to choose to bless the world or to step back and watch. But some wise person once said the universe doesn't give you what you ask with your thoughts. It gives you what you demand with your choices and your actions. I've had a difficult time with this particular sermon in that I started with the idea of speaking about evolution more from a scientific sense of the world, talking about Darwin and his understandings and curiosity about how things change, and hearing that E.O. Wilson passed away, sort of gathering some of his thoughts together. But things change. Things evolve in the preparation of a sermon, especially my sermons. Who knows what might show up on Sunday morning. But it really is, it comes around to the idea of how do we change? How do we evolve in this world, in our lives, knowing that the results of our actions may not necessarily be evident in our own lifetimes? And that's a hard concept, especially when there's so much of our own personal histories, our own personal lives that we need to deal with. And I believe we do that as a community. That yes, each and every one of us can, in fact, go out and make a difference in the world by engaging, by opening conversation, by figuring out and expressing our glad curiosity about what's going on and how we might engage and how we might understand things differently, and not stepping back, not retreating into a particular point of view, which is so easy to do, especially in this world in this time. How we change is the subject of so many different writers. But there is a sense that it has to be collective if we're actually going to make a difference in the world. We have to be talking to our neighbor, to our friend, to our family, regardless of where they are at. We need to be creating an undercurrent of change. Change doesn't happen just because we're standing at the door of the courthouse with placards. That's part of it. But it changes when each and every one of us engage in the conversation about it, the undercurrent. I think I've shared this before, but we have a good friend who's the president of the Massachusetts Municipal Association, collection of the towns and cities in Massachusetts and their association that supports them in their work. He had also been a state rep in his early career. And he shared that he truly believed that change at that level, the level of government, didn't happen until the people who were there in those positions really felt that the grassroots, that the change had already taken place at the grassroots level. That the people already felt that this was the direction that needed to be, that we needed to go in. And so that conversation, that idea that we need to engage in the conversation regularly and deliberately with those we know, but also with those we don't. In their book, Connected, The Surprising Power of Our Social Networks and How They Shape Our Lives, the psychologists Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler argue that we are powerfully affected, not only by our family and friends, but by their friends and their friends. The research that they undertook documents that social networks, and I don't mean LinkedIn or Instagram, but our own social networks, spread happiness, generosity, love, but they can also spread, of course, sadness and fear. The networks are always there. We're always plugged in, various degrees. And they exhibit an influence over our lives. And as part of them, we too are part of that influence in the lives of other people. And the connections don't end with the people we know, because there are people who know other people who know other people. So the conversation has to be continuing for any change to occur. Grace Lee Boggs, a wonderful social action person and worker rights individual, social activist, philosopher, feminist, talks about the idea that yes, a rebellion is important. We have to get out there in the streets. We have to exhibit our feelings verbally, vocally, visually. But if a revolution is going to happen, it happens because there are socially responsible individuals who are reaching across boundaries and having conversations and making things happen. They go from rejections, as Grace Lee Boggs said, to projections, sharing what we see for the future and talking about it. She shared that there was a lot of righteous and understandable anger in the 1960s because the civil rights movement defined itself as the oppressed. But for the movement to go forward, the power has to be in the creation of relationships. In the book Walden, Henry David Thoreau had a few profound things to say about change, one of which was, things don't change, we change. But it was Emerson who actually said something that I think is important. He said, he celebrated those people whose souls were quick and strong enough to burst through self-made boundaries into new territory, writing that the heart that refuses to be imprisoned in its first and narrowest places is already trending outward with a vast force into immense and innumerable expansions. We like to hold on to the comfortable. And yet change, if we let it, works at us from within and from our networks and from outside, and it is a miracle. All change, Thoreau said, is a miracle to contemplate, but it's a miracle that's taking place every instant because we are changing every instant. So perhaps the best we might contemplate how to change, or the need for change, is to be able to move beyond our self-made boundaries, our comfort zones, to better serve ourselves and others in this changing world. Like many of you, though, I'm feeling sort of like the poem that Ed read. Wait, the change is too rapid. I don't know how to react. How do I rebuild my world? The world that we create sometimes is too small, too complacent. And yet, here we are at the end of 2021, the beginning of 2022, and we have a choice to make. What do? How do we rebuild our world? Again, finding ways to express our hopes, our values, as widely as we possibly can, to spread that good news for a new year, for a new way, a new life. It takes that conversation continually happening among us and beyond these walls. There's certainly times when it's important to take our stand at the barricade, but it's also important to engage these things every day. What are our visions of this world? As Unitarian Universalists, we have our 7 ethical principles that we pursue, beginning with the idea of the dignity and worth of every person, which means we feel that we are part of something and we need to respect everyone else that's part of that. And not just to lift them up, but to understand that in order for people to have a sense of equality in the world, that we have to change systems. That we have to make lives have value not by lifting them up, but by sharing this world. if we are serious about pursuing the good, the beautiful, the true, we also must understand the factors working against those things. An ethical life vision cannot be divorced from acquiring an understanding of what is really going on in the world, recognizing it for what it is, and realizing that there are forces against which we need to fight. And once again, I believe we do that most effectively in community. Liberal religion and Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religion in the sense that we understand that new truths come to us in different ways all the time, from reinterpretations of ancient scripture to new understandings from science and philosophy, psychology. We get a better sense of the world if we engage those things, history. But we have to push it forward. We have to be able to translate it into something different and new as we understand the forces that are active in the world today. Liberal religion, with our ideas about a progressive idea of the world, that we need to continue to seek out those new ideas and new truths, also has its faults. And that sometimes, as a group of people with a certain degree of privilege, we are comfortable sitting on the sidelines and feeling like we're doing our part by contributing here and there to a worthy cause. We do tend to be center of the road. And we have to ask ourselves, and part of that conversation that I'm talking about, whether or not that's enough. Whether or not we need to push beyond our own comfort zones as a community and engage the world more seriously on the issues that we believe in, the environment and racism, worker rights, all those things. I have chosen to pursue ministry because I believe in the possibility of change. And my thoughts over the past 8 years since I've been ordained haven't really changed. I believe in the potential for individual growth and change. I believe in the power of community to effect change in the world. And despite evidence to the contrary, I hold an abiding faith that humanity as a whole can move toward the ideal of beloved community on earth. Not in my lifetime. But does that mean I don't do anything about it? And I'm not exactly sure that the arc of the moral universe necessarily bends towards justice. But I certainly know it won't move in that direction unless we start bending all together. Making changes on scales both large and small that reflect a commitment to creating a just society. And I believe that a commitment to that kind of change happens in community most effectively. So as we approach this new year, 2022, having survived 2 years of the coronavirus, a racial upheaval, a political upheaval, we need to understand the realities of those things. We need to understand that the rebellion of January 6, 2021 was not something that was a fluke of a few people over on this far side, but an attempt at a rebellion from people who have a strong, serious mindset about what they need in this world. And if we don't start engaging in that conversation, then many of the fears that we hold for this society may come true. We also need to understand that the racial upheaval in this country is real. And that if we don't engage that content, that subject, the way that we exist and the way that our privilege allows us to exist in the world, we don't change ourselves, that won't change either. I come into the end of 2021 and beginning of 22 with a sense of both trepidation and hope. Hope because that's sort of my natural tendency. I do see the glass as half full. But I also believe in the possibility of an evolution, slow but steady. E.O. Wilson agreed with that. He said, change can happen, that kind of epigenetic change above the sort of the work of natural selection. But human beings have the ability to step above that. It takes time, though. But it takes us to engage. And so my wish for you, for me, for our world for 2022 is to just start talking. To engage with everyone we know. To be uplifted by that conversation because it's vital. To engage it with a glad curiosity, much like our wonderful scientists do, trying to figure out what's going on and then suggesting a theory of change. So, from the beginnings of a conversation about evolution and science, I have moved very much to the area of social change and a long-term evolution that doesn't take place unless I begin to engage. I wish that for you in 2022 and for this congregation as a whole. So may it be. Normally I would ask Ed to introduce the offering customers, but he's sitting over there and I'm sitting, oh, here he comes.
Now is the time for us to express our gratitude for this community, its work, its vision, and all the ways in which it nourishes our lives. From its welcoming doors and sheltering wall to its good and generous people. Every once in a while, I'm asked what Unitarian Universalists believe. I must admit to initially being stumped. Oh, not because we don't believe, but because we believe so much. We believe in the freedom of religion, of tolerance of religious ideas, in the authority of reason and conscience, in the never-ending search for truth, in the worth and dignity of every human being. Additionally, I believe in the importance of this place in Naples, this place of beauty, this building, our gardens, and most of all, its people. It's good here. But to maintain and grow requires the greenery of foliage and of money. And with that latter thought in mind, you can contribute in any of three ways as shown on the screen. Your gifts are gratefully received. I have a few announcements. We hope you can join us tomorrow evening, January 3rd, for our Mindful Monday Forum. This week, we welcome back the thoughtful and knowledgeable and entertaining sisters Dr. June Sochin and Joyce Schrager. We'll be presenting a program titled Current Reasons for Hope, a commentary on current U.S. politics. If you have heard these ladies, then I don't need to tell you what a program they put on. And if you haven't, it will be a treat.
Only on Zoom.
Correct, they'll do it. And last but not least, we remind you that this month is the time of our annual pledge drive with the theme of stoking the fires of commitment. So please, listen thoughtfully for the upcoming presentations and read your communications from the steward team. This wonderful community exists and will continue to thrive only through our love and our contributions of time, talent, and treasure. More information about all of these offerings can be found on our e-news blasts or in our monthly newsletter. Tony?
So we have one final announcement from our team against racism and oppression, Taro. This past year, we did a number of things, including small group conversations and bringing in some speakers to UUCGN about racism and our continuing issues in this society with the oppression of minorities. Our first effort in the coming year will be to have a difficult conversation about policing. We talk about change, we talk about the realities of the world, and one of the issues that keeps bubbling up is the way that we engage in law enforcement in this country. So we're going to be joining up with the Reverend Ann Dunlap of Showing Up for Racial Justice and presenting a workshop of 4 sessions, one of which will be History and the Roots of Policing. We'll be talking about faith traditions and policing, reimagining community safety, and then finally, where do we go from here? So it's going to be a really interesting conversation about a really difficult subject that I believe we need to be talking about. So I'm going to be preaching on this with Ann on the 16th of this month, Martin Luther King Jr. Sunday. She'll be joining us on Zoom up here. But the workshop starts before that, so I urge you to I think there'll be a sign-up sheet on the pavilion today, and if not, then find me and we'll make sure you can get on that list. I really urge you to participate in that because it's going to take all of us to share our thoughts and ideas about this very difficult subject. It begins on the 13th, January 13th, starting at 7:30. So sign up. And now let's sing our final hymn. At least Sean and I will sing it. You can hum it. It's one of my favorites, For the Earth Forever Turning.
For the earth forever turning, for the skies for every sea, for our lives, for all we cherish, sing we our joyful song of peace. For the mountains, hills, and pastures in their silent majesty, for the stars, for all the heavens, sing we our joyful song of peace. For the sun, for rain and thunder, for the seasons' harmony, for our lives, for all creation, sing we our joyful praise to thee. For our world we raise our voices, for the home that gives us birth. In our joy we
Our benediction today comes from the Reverend Rebecca Parker. Your gifts, whatever you choose them to be, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting, any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question. What will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. Go in peace and go in love.